Hello everyone. Welcome to this webinar on schedulers and message cards. This here is a two-part webinar where first up we will be talking about schedulers and try our hand at creating one. In the second part, let's discuss about message cards, how to custom build one and our message builder as well. A bit of information before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and the recording will be shared with you shortly. If you have any questions during the webinar, please do not hesitate to ask them. You can ask questions through the chat bubble that you see on your screen. Our team will get back to you with a response as soon as possible. So with that, let's get into the webinar. So our agenda for today's webinar starts off with an introduction about schedulers, how and when schedulers can be useful. We will also create a sample scheduler, and moving on to the second part, we'll cover message cards and the different themes and components that are available and how you can design a message card. An integral part of message cards are buttons, so we'll see how to put in a button and trigger a button action using functions and the different action types that are available too. So, what are schedulers? A scheduler is just a timed repetitive action that is performed over a periodic interval. It is important to understand when you can employ and configure a scheduler. For example, generating your website engagement statistics report. This here might be a weekly or a monthly action where you want your team to know how your website is performing, the user engagement, and to discuss about where you can improve. So since this action is repetitive between the same time interval, you can go ahead and configure a scheduler to generate the report and share it directly in a channel. So next step is configuring and setting up a scheduler. Our question is, on what basis can you configure a scheduler and what are the different options that are available? Schedulers in Click can be configured based on three different time frequencies. It can be a daily scheduler or a scheduler which runs weekly or a day-wise scheduler or a monthly scheduler. So once you choose the frequency, you can select the time at which the scheduler should be triggered. So that was about configuring a scheduler. Now let's see how you can set up one. So there are a few important things you should be aware of while you're setting up a scheduler. The first one is no return response. Since a scheduler is technically a system trigger, we will not need to return any response to the chat. Instead, we will be using our deluge tasks to post a scheduler response in a chat or a channel or to a bot. Authentication. Schedulers working with connections or simply authenticating a scheduler for the first time. So the connections used in a scheduler will work only with the scheduler creator's authentication. Error handling in a scheduler. Errors or failures in execution will be notified through TAS, Click's native bot, and the execution time. The maximum allocated time for executing a scheduler is 15 seconds. So with that in mind, let's start off with creating a simple scheduler. So go to your Click home page and click on the integrations icon that you see on Click's top navigation bar. This will take you to the integrations view. You will find schedulers listed in the left-hand panel. Click on schedulers and select the create scheduler button. Once you land on the schedulers configuration page, apart from the usual name and description, you have various options to configure the scheduler. The recurring period can be daily, weekly, or monthly. Based on your recurring period selection, there is one more option where you can decide how frequent your scheduler should run. You can decide the day and the date and the time for triggering your scheduler, and once done, click on Save and Edit Code. So I'm just configuring this scheduler for every day now. Let me just click on Save and Edit Code, and Let's just try posting a simple message with this scheduler. So all I'm going to do now is use the zoho.click.post to bot deluge task. This task will post your message to the bot as the bot itself. And this task requires you to give the bot's unique name and the string to be posted. Now to get your bot unique name, just go to the bot section, click on a bot that you have and get the bot's endpoint. So from the endpoint, you have the bot unique name. This over here is your bot unique name. Just copy it and go back to your scheduler code and put in the bot unique name. The message that I'm going to post is my first click scheduler. So I have my sample code ready. Let's just save the code and let's try executing it. To execute the scheduler for a trial run, you have to go back to the scheduler's preview page where you will find the trial run button. Click on it to execute the scheduler. This scheduler now gets executed to give a success response and the message will be posted in the bot's chat. So let's go back to Click and check the chat, and yes, we have the message posted in the bot's chat here. Okay, so that's exactly how simple it is to configure a scheduler and post a message. So now that we've got the basics covered, let's try creating a scheduler which will bring the list of tasks from Todoist for us. So Todoist is an application which helps you with your to-do list and basically a task manager application where you can put in your tasks and all the details that you have to do for your day. The workflow here is pretty simple. The scheduler will be executed every day to pull up the list of pending tasks from my task list in Todoist. The message posted will have an option to mark the task as complete, or if you want to view the task in detail, then there is an option to directly redirect me to the task list in Todoist. So let's get started creating the scheduler now. I'm going to name it as task list and give the description as pulls my task list from Todoist. I want the scheduler to run every day, so I choose the daily option and the time as 9 a.m. Now clicking on save and edit code will take me to the deluge editor. So I've got the code here for my scheduler already. Let's just try to understand what the workflow is. Since we are integrating with Todoist, we are using the invoke URL task and calling the Todoist tasks API. So this API will get the list of all the tasks that are available in my task list. And from the API response, we will get the list of tasks that have the status pending by using the for each loop and add it into a message card and directly post this in the bot's chat. So let's save the code and try a trial execution now. In my scheduler's preview page, I am clicking on the trial run button, and once my scheduler gives a success response, I'm going ahead and checking my bot's chat. So this over here is the response we wanted. And you can see that across each task's name, there is an option to mark the task as complete, or if I want to know more details about this particular task, then I can go ahead and click on the view task option. So this scheduler will help me with my pending task list for every day, and I do not have to worry about marking it as complete or getting all my tasks sorted from Todoist. Now this brings us to the second part of this webinar where we will discuss about message cards. Message cards are rich interactive messages that can help display a lot of information in a neat structured manner. To help organize the large amount of data that you're about to share, there are different components that can be used, such as table, label, list, images, and buttons. And what's more, we have 4 different themes that you can select to make your card look more interesting. So these are some images of the message cards that we created. This over here is a label that you're seeing, and you can insert buttons as well and have a custom message sender too. So to help create and design such cards, we have our message builder. Let's see how you can go about designing a message card now. You can access the message builder through this URL here, click.zoho.com messagebuilder.do. This will take you to the message builder. So I am accessing the message builder now, and over here we can see that we have a message added by default. Let's just try to change the theme first. I want to try the modern inline theme. So there we go. The card takes shape already. And now let's try to have a custom sender and a custom image. So what this does is it allows you to send the message with a custom sender name and image. The message will still be sent by you, but the user will not know that. So you're basically taking an alias name. If these keys are not set, then the message will be posted with your name and image by default. So I'm giving the custom sender name as my bot and setting the image here. Let's try to add a few components now. 2 buttons, a yes and a no, and a table. So this is the card here finally, and to get the JSON for this card, all you have to do is click on view JSON and copy this code and paste it in your Deluge editor. You can then alter the data according to your API response, and once that is done, you're pretty much good to go. Now, if you had noted the scheduler message, then you can see that it posts a message card with a table containing all the tasks and 2 buttons. We already saw how you can go about adding a table. So let's take a deeper look into how buttons work. Now Click has 2 types of buttons, instant buttons and message card buttons. Each button can have a label, the type and the action defined. The label key indicates the button name. Type is the button type. It can either be positive or negative, and the action object will contain the type of action the button should trigger. The instant button syntax is far more simpler. You just have to give the button label followed by the action type and its properties associated. So how can you invoke a button's action? So there are 3 different ways of triggering a button to perform an action. They are invoke function, system API, and the open URL option. So to invoke a function, you will have to call a deluge function when the button is clicked. The system APIs are used to trigger default chat actions with the help of APIs. Default chat options such as audio video calls, start chat, contact invite, get location access, and so on. And finally, you can provide the open URL option. So buttons associated with this action will open the associated URL that you provided. Now do note that the open URL option will not work with instant buttons. The confirm dialog box can be considered as a subset of invoke function itself. So this will basically open a dialog box on clicking the button and works only with message card buttons. The table here specifies what actions work along with the button types. You can see that the open URL and the confirm prompt will not work with instant buttons as we discussed already. This is because the open URL can in turn be applied as a markdown in itself. In addition to this, you have to note that the button label that you provide should contain a maximum of only 20 characters, and the reference key that you provide should contain a maximum of only 100 characters. So with that, let's create a sample message card and try working with each of the button action individually. So I have my message card JSON here and I'm going to trigger this message using a simple slash command. The first button action that we'll be seeing is the invoke function action type. A leave request to approve or decline has been sent to a user and clicking on this button should invoke a function. The message card buttons have been used right here and now let us take a look at the message syntax. We have given the button name, the label and the actions object which contains the invoke function as a type and the function's name and function owner name has been given as well. Now to create your function, go to your integrations view and click on functions in the left hand panel. Click on create function and give the function name and description. This function name should be used in the button object. So I'm going to give the function name as a sample function and my description is also here. So click on save and edit code. This is my function code here. When the user clicks on the approve button, this button should post a response saying the leave request has been approved, and when the user clicks on decline, the button should post a response saying the request has been declined. The target map will contain details about the button name and hint, and from the target map you can identify if the user clicks on the approve or the decline button. If you have provided reference keys for your button, then they will be available as arguments. So let's try executing this button by clicking on it. Now clicking on the approve button posts the message saying the request has been approved. And similarly, let us try using the same message but with an instant button now. The function will also be the same. The sample syntax for the instant button is just the button label followed by the function name and the owner email address. This here is the message card and clicking on the approve button again will invoke this function and it will post a message saying this request has been approved. So that's about your invoke function. Now moving on to the next action type, which is open URL. This here is the message to be posted. This message card just says that your campaign report is ready. Click here to view the report. So this button should contain the URL that should take you to the campaign's report. Now the button object will contain open URL as the value for the key type and we need to provide the necessary URL in the data object. The third action type here is the system API. So the system API that we'll try using today is start chat. There are a few other system APIs that are available. The details and the syntax for this can be referred from our REST API document. So the example that we are referring to here is a simple notification message that your bot sends you when somebody assigns a few issues to you in Zoho projects. So you have an option to start a chat with the user who has assigned this issue to you, or you can go ahead and view the issues that have been assigned. Now the start chat button will work with the system API action and the view issues button will take you to the project's view from where you can take a look at all the issues that have been assigned. The syntax for system API is give the system action followed by the user ID with whom the action should be performed. Now let's just click on the button to execute it and there we go. Clicking on the start chat option opens up the chat with Olivia who has assigned the issues. So similarly, this can be achieved using the instant button too. Let's try that now. This here is the syntax of the instant button and clicking on that again opens up the chat with Olivia. And finally, the last option, which is basically a subset of the invoke function action type. The function that you invoke with respect to a button can first open a dialog prompt and upon the user input, it can move on to perform the intended action. So, one good example is a message posted with a button, give feedback about something. So, give feedback is the button name, and when the user clicks on this button, then they have a dialog box where they can put in their feedback, and this will post the feedback to the developer. So, let us try that as well. So we see that in the button object syntax, there is one more object that has been added, which is confirm. This is where your dialog box will be prompted, and based on the dialog box input, you can trigger your function's execution code. A quick recap of what we covered in this webinar. The first part was all about schedulers and how you can go about configuring one. And the second part was an introduction to message cards, the different types of themes and the components we have, and also the various button actions that can be invoked. Thank you so much for joining me today. You can try creating message cards and buttons and let us know if you have any questions or doubts. Feel free to get in touch with us through this email ID clicktricks@zohoclick.com. We are here to help you out in case of any questions. And if you like this webinar, then show us some love. Check out our Facebook page for tips and tricks about building your app, and tweet to us with the hashtag ZohoClick and ClickTricks2019. Next up is an exciting webinar on Click storage or databases, and we are pretty sure you'll love it, so stay tuned for that. Until next time, Manasa.